Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the podcast where we discuss all things USMNT y la Selección Mexicana. I'm joined once again by my co-host, the Tocayo Adrian. Adrian, how are you, man?
Hey, what up, dude? How's it going?
It's going great, man. Happy to be here with both of you guys. Also joined by a very special guest tonight, USL and NWSL pro referee, Chris Canales. Chris, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here for sure. We're really eager to kind of pick your brain on some of these controversial, to say the least, plays here at the World Cup. But yeah, Chris, thank you for joining us. This is episode 4, World Cup 2022, refereeing and VAR analysis. And before we start, real quickly, if you haven't had a chance to go listen to episode 3, we kind of went in depth as to the World Cup final and the World Cup in general, discussing key points throughout the tournament, controversies. So it's available right now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all other major streaming services. So please give it a listen if you haven't so already. Starting off, Chris, before we really get into it, man, I just wanted to kind of, get to know you a little bit here. Give us some of your background. How long have you been reffing? Where are you from? What's your favorite position to play? Have you played soccer? Yeah, what can you tell us about yourself?
So I'm from El Paso, Texas, but I became a referee. I think 10 years ago now, about 10 years ago, in New York City. So I was living in New York City and started there.
Wow.
Like you start anything, you start at the bottom. So I started, with under 10 kids games, basically. And just have progressed from there. You kind of move your way up into higher level games in youth soccer and in high school soccer and things like that. And eventually, refereeing especially is very focused on merit and performance. And so you have to be good, and you can move up the ranks by doing a good job. And eventually into high school and college soccer, and then I've been working in professional soccer now for about 3.5 years.
Cool.
So in USL and NWSL, and so I'm a referee in the organization called Pro. It's the professional referee organization, and they assign referees to matches in MLS, in NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, and in USL, which is the men's second and third divisions.
Awesome, man. So you mentioned you started with, youth. So does it go youth level and then kind of competitive school soccer, or is like 5-year-old, 6-year-olds the like basic where you start off, or how does?
Yeah,
What's
in
the
the United
pyramid?
States, in the US, school soccer happens outside of the National Federation. And so there's kind of different pathways, right? But everything within U.S. soccer is all the sanctioned games. So you start with youth and you work your way up to older kids and then higher levels. And officials will go to tournaments. Back then, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was the Development Academy tournaments that had a lot of the MLS academies and other academy level teams.
Interesting.
And with tournaments in Florida and California where teams are traveling to them. And you kind of work your way up through those levels within U.S. soccer. And then some people make their way into high school soccer, and then college, again, is separate, right, through the NCAA, and there are different licensing organizations for referees as well. And there are a lot of professional referees who actually are working in college soccer as well.
So on college soccer, do you
I
have to
do a
go
little
through like Division 1 through, well, I guess Division 3 all the way to 1?
Yeah, again, there's kind of a separate hierarchy in college where
Gotcha.
some people are working in lower divisions and some in the higher divisions, and there's significant overlap between professional referees and officials working in professional soccer and then also in college. you don't necessarily have to do one to do the other, and there are a lot of college officials because there are a lot of college games. So they come from
I bet,
all
yeah.
different schools. Mhm.
Cool, man. So did you start by playing soccer, or you just went straight to reffing, or what's your story there?
Yeah, I played, a somewhat high level, but I wasn't gonna make it as a career as a professional player, and I turned to refereeing uh, later again than a lot of people do. A lot of the folks who are professional referees start refereeing as in their early teens, some of them, and so because they have a lot of those extra years of experience, it helps them to advance. I started pretty late in my early 20s,
Okay.
but again, different people take different paths, and the good thing in officiating, I think it's a good thing, is that, like I said before, a lot of it is on merit and performance, and so if you do a good job, you can move up fast, and you know, thankfully that's kind of what happened for me.
Yeah, awesome,
Is-
man.
So, what made you choose, I want, you just woke up one day and say, I'm gonna be a referee, or what made you go gravitate towards that?
Yeah, to be honest, I started doing it in college, and it was a thing for pocket money, and I figured if I have time on the weekends, I might as well use it to exercise and get paid to run around and do soccer games. I never started thinking like I want to be a professional referee one day, but I did enjoy it a lot when I first started, and realized like, oh, this is something I could stick with.
Nice.
So it
Nice.
worked out really well.
Cool. I guess before we move on to the first topic here, Chris, do you have any memorable moments you'd like to share with us? Any funny moments or anything that come to mind?
I've been involved in some great uh, rivalry games, and real bangers of games over the years now. I think I definitely have a highlight moment where it was a match in USL that I worked on. I was an assistant referee, uh, and it was in Sacramento against Phoenix in the USL Championship, and there was a goal that was scored by Phoenix, and every player for Phoenix and every staff member on the Phoenix bench, on the Sacramento bench, every player for Sacramento, and every Sacramento fan in the whole stadium, which was full, thought that the player was offside. And it was the
Wow.
loudest I've ever been booed in my whole life.
Oh man.
And
Dang.
I felt, and it was, I mean, there was just pandemonium in the stands, and coach came running over to scream in my face, and I was very vindicated in the end because I was correct.
Nice.
Um, so it just goes to show there's really only one person, if they're working hard in the right position, to make those offside decisions, and hopefully that's that assistant referee, and they're in a good position, and they know.
There you go, man. Awesome. I don't envy you in that position at all. Dang. Well, cool, man. Again, thanks for joining us. And before we really get into the meat of the potatoes here and the big topic, the World Cup obviously just ended, and as a fan, I kind of want to get your reaction to the first Middle Eastern World Cup. Do you think, I guess, starting off with the final, do you think the best team won?
Um, I think it's hard to say in a tournament that's like a knockout style like this that the team that wins is the best team, or that if they played this tournament 100 times, like that the team that won would win the most times or whatever. Um, but I think a very good team won. I think they were definitely deserving. Um, but I think if after the first round of games you had said Argentina was going to win, people probably wouldn't have agreed because they played pretty badly against Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh, so I don't know. As much as a team can be the best team, like I think they played an excellent tournament aside from that first match.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a real fan of the game who isn't happy for Messi for finally completing the trophy cabinet. So
So Are you a Messi fan?
Yeah, I can't understand how someone could say they're not a fan of Messi if you watch Messi play. I'm a Ronaldo fan too.
Gotcha. Well, so do
I like
you?
to watch good players.
I agreed. No, I think Adrian and I are in the same boat with you. Well, would you consider that now Messi is the undisputed GOAT now that he has the World Cup in his hands?
My answer is kind of the same as the answer about teams. Like I don't know. Yeah, sure. I don't think there has to be just one goat, like one greatest. I think there are a couple players who are like the biggest legends of the game. Obviously, like Pele and Maradona, and I think Ronaldo is in there too. Both Ronaldo Fenomeno and Cristiano Ronaldo, and I mean Messi there too. I don't personally think anyone has to be the single greatest of all time.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Maybe that's a cop out, but that's how I feel.
So being Mexican Americans, we kind of tend to follow obviously the U.S. and Mexico, especially in these big tournaments. What starting with the U.S., how do you rate their performance? Do you think they lived up to expectation, failed it, or just met expectations? What do what'd you see in them?
And be honest, man. You don't have to take it. You don't have to go easy on them or whatever.
They're kids, but they can handle it.
I honestly think that they played fine. I think they played well in the group stage. Um, I think they got about as far as they should have gotten. Uh, that game against the Netherlands, they were definitely outmatched in that game, at least on the
Big
day.
time.
But I don't think it was a surprise that day that they lost. I think people were hopeful that they would progress further, but that doesn't mean to say that they're a bad team or they played badly in the tournament. Like I think they played well and they showed that in the future they'll have a good team because it's a young team that I think will still be mostly together in 4 years. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
definitely a young core, and they
Hmm.
keep sending more and more to Europe. So I
Mhm.
think that's good for the future, especially in 2026, where we'll be playing at home.
Hmm. And what about Eltri, Chris? I mean, how do you feel about Eltri now that they didn't even make it to the next round?
Yeah, they were a little. I think they were less impressive than the United States. Again, they played okay, uh, but I think in their group they should have made it through.
Definitely.
They left it too late, and yeah, it was one. I think the last 15 minutes of their last group stage match. That was one of the best,
Yeah.
highest stress moments of the World Cup. Right, it
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
really high intensity and high anxiety, and if they had gotten through, I think it would have been like an amazing moment for them. But
Yeah, we kind of discussed that. When we were talking about that group, Poland, man, they did not play an attractive style of football at all. They were
Yeah.
very, very boring, and they really. I can't really say Mexico deserved to go through because they left it late, like you said. But at least they went out fighting with their style of play. Poland, man, they left a lot to be desired, and they got shown in their round of 16 clash for sure.
Yeah.
yeah, but again, I think boring football can be good football sometimes if it gets you through, and eking out wins isn't a bad thing. And uh, it hurt Mexico this time, so it's
Yep.
unfortunate, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. Well, I guess let's get into the reason we have you here, Chris, to kind of start discussing some of these controversial plays. The first one, right the first day of the tournament, it is Qatar versus Ecuador, and there is a ball played in for from like, one of the who was it, Adrian? Do you recall who was the one that played the ball in? One of the Ecuadorian midfielders.
Ah, man, it's
Um,
gonna be a tough one. Maybe some Caicedo. I don't.
Well,
I don't know.
someone obviously played the ball in, and Al Sheeb, the goalie for Qatar, jumped. And initially, it looked like it came off of Al Sheeb and kind of went into Ener Valencia's. Eventually, got to Ener Valencia.
Hmm.
But after a quick analysis of the video, Chris, you kind of pointed out something that Adrian nor myself had seen. After Al Sheeb kind of hits that ball, it hits off of the defender or attacker from Ecuador. kind of resetting the whole offside rule. Do you think you could kind of explain that a little bit more for us here?
Yeah, sure. So when the goalkeeper comes to punch the ball, like you said, he doesn't punch the ball straight up into the air, which is what on a first look it might appear to be. He punches the ball kind of forward, and it hits off of the head of an attacker. So that touch off of the attacking player becomes the new kick point. Is what we would call it, the point at which the offside decision is made. And so at that moment, and this is what you have seen in the X-ray, right? In the new AI assisted automated offside technology.
Right.
There is a player from Ecuador, an attacker, whose foot is in an offside position at that moment when the ball pops off of the head of the attacker and up into the air. And what makes it confusing is that the player in an offside position, I think it was Estrada, he then returns back from an offside position. The ball bounces once, and he challenges for the ball. He's the next player to challenge for the ball. So again, the offside decision happens on that attacking touch, and at that moment he's in an offside position, and because he's the next player to challenge for the ball, that's now an offside offense.
All right.
It's not the most clear decision, and I think it's unfortunate maybe that something this complicated happens in the first game, because
I don't think anyone expected
started the controversy, and people, it's not an easy one to explain, and it's not necessarily an easy one to understand. And so it's a correct decision, but obviously people start talking about refereeing stuff in the first game. So it's unfortunate that it happened like that, but it is ultimately the right decision.
Right.
So Adrian and I, we were discussing this play before we started the pod, and we both thought that it was called offside because of the keeper moving forward, and then I guess that realigned I guess the offside line or whatever. But I guess we were 100% wrong on that one, Adrian.
Yeah, I like we discussed. I thought it was. Chris, maybe you could shed some light on this, but when you have the goalkeeper in the back and you have the last defender, everyone always thinks it's for people that don't really know the intricate rules of this play. People think that it's the last defender and the goalkeeper. If you pass that last defender, you're offside. But in reality, it's the last player, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the the goalie. It could be that goalie and two defenders behind him, or something.
Yeah. So you mentioned like last player and last defender. A lot of people say those terms, those phrases, because what happens in the typical play is that there's the goal. You think of the goalkeeper as being somewhere near the goal, somewhere in between between the posts,
right?
And then you think about the last defender. But what it actually says in the laws of the game, in Law 11, which describes offside, is the second to last opponent. That's the important player that you're looking at. So it has nothing to do with the last defender, but it's the second to last opponent. And that opponent can be
any player?
It can be any player. It can be the goalkeeper. It could be anybody.
Gotcha.
And so the goalkeeper, when you're determining offside, has no special role, right? They're one player, and they could be the second to last opponent. If they come out and there are two players behind them, then one of those players is the second to last opponent, and the goalkeeper is not part of the equation at all.
Gotcha.
And so, again, most offside decisions, the goalkeeper is the last opponent, and then some defender or some other player on the goalkeeper's team is the second to last opponent. But if the goalkeeper comes out, that's not always the case.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Enlightening.
Cool. Yeah, that definitely that clears up a lot of cloudy thoughts I had about that. The second one we kind of want to bring to your attention, Chris, is happened between Croatia and Belgium, also in the group stage. So there was a ball crossed in from Luka Modric, and it goes into number 5. Number 5, Vertonghen kind of heads it out, and it comes off Dejan Lovren, right?
Yeah,
Adrian?
Dejan Lovren is number 6 for Croatia, and I think number 5 for Belgium is Jan Vertonghen. I think so.
Right. Yeah. And then there's a foul in the box, which they ultimately call a penalty on, and he goes and checks VAR, and that's kind of those two players, Lovren and Vertonghen, are kind of shown on the screen at that time as battling it out, running in. And the moment that Modric kind of crosses that ball in, it's shown that Lovren's, I guess, arm is kind of ahead of Vertonghen. I might be dumb here, but I thought, as long as the header or the feet, whatever you use to play the ball, is behind the defender, you wouldn't be really necessarily called offside. But I guess that's not the case, Chris.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It has to do with what the definition is of the arm for determining offside and for determining handball as well. But in the laws, the arm starts at the bottom of the armpit. And it comes with diagrams, but it is here. It's at the bottom of the armpit. Yeah. If you feel where the bottom of your armpit is and you draw a line straight across from there, that's where the arm begins. And so this one just has to do with the way that Lovren is leaning forward. This is one where the precision of the new again what they've been calling the X-ray in the media, right? The AI assisted offside technology that it shows a really accurate position of where these players were, and can recreate this picture that the VAR can use. It's a tiny amount of distance, right, between the two players.
Sure.
But it can tell you very conclusively whether the tiny fraction of the shoulder was in front of the defender or behind the defender, and in this case, it returns offside. And because they have this technology and it is incredibly precise, they'll go with that decision.
So I guess if he had his shoulder a little higher up behind, literally just that, what you explained, the shoulder, draw an imaginary line, cut it there. If he had been behind that imaginary line, he would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. It just is an extra little bit of lean that put him in an offside position.
Yeah, a little inch.
And again, the margins are very fine, but for offside, they're either offside or they're not offside. And because they have a tool now that's so precise, they can make that decision pretty confidently from the VAR booth.
Hey, I do have a question for this kind of play, because I know that now they are essentially letting the play run its course before they make a call on offsides. But I wanted to ask you, Chris, how many, I guess, previous plays or how much of the play the referee, I guess the VAR team observes? Because they call the penalty, and when they go to VAR, right? How many seconds or how many, I guess, minutes or how many, I guess, frames do the guys review prior making sure that the call was valid or not?
This is a good question. So they go back and review anything that happened within the same attacking phase, it's called.
Okay.
And so it has to do with how an attack has progressed.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a new attacking phase starts if the team loses the ball, right?
Right.
But for example, if the team plays the ball further back out of attack or something like that happens where it's not necessarily a loss of possession, but it's a restart of a new attacking phase, that would be the new divider, so to speak, of where the play would be reviewed back to. But they're making sure that in that phase of play, there was nothing that would invalidate the goal. And I think it's worth mentioning, too, why that play was reviewed in the first place. So The VAR, I think a lot of people think of the VAR as a robot, right? But the VAR is a person
Yeah.
who's sitting in a booth. The video assistant referee, and there's an AVAR, the assistant video assistant referee.
Wow, I did not know there was a second one.
Wow. Yeah.
In the World Cup, there were multiple. There is an offside video assistant referee, a support video assistant referee. There were multiple people in the booth, and those people are in the booth plus an operator, someone who is. I've seen these people at work. It's incredible. They move so fast. Hawkeye is the company that provides all the equipment and services for VAR. Who you might know from tennis. They're known for tennis, right? They do all
the precision,
the use in tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And these operators are incredible. They move so fast, and they know how to use the system so fast. And so they're sitting in there as well. Everything is directed by the person, the VAR, and there are multiple screens. The game is always being watched. So even while a review is happening, that's why you have a second person there, right? There's one person watching the review and conducting the review, and the other person is still watching the live play of the game to see if anything else is happening. And they kind of take over the role of the VAR while the VAR is going through a review. But things are being checked all the time. And the reason why this was checked and recommended down to the field to the referee for an on-field review is because of a penalty kick given. So anytime there's a goal given, a penalty kick given, or a red card given, that is being reviewed automatically.
Right.
That will be reviewed every time. So you hear people say sometimes like the VAR didn't even look at it. That's never ever the case. The VAR is looking at everything.
It's always looking.
And they're always doing an actual review, not just watching, but a thorough review on any of those situations. Plus, there are lots of others where they will conduct a review too. But in those three situations, they are always reviewing every single one.
Wow.
Now, a review by the VAR is not the same as an on-field review by the referee, where the VAR refers it down to the referee to look at the monitor. That typically happens when the VAR thinks that there's some kind of intervention that they need to make.
Okay. So you mentioned those three plays that the VAR always kind of, goes back to. I don't know if you know this, but so, I think the Serie A is going to be the first to kind of implement this new VAR technology. Is that only for the World Cup that they go back and review those three plays? Or, do you know if other leagues will also be doing that?
That's already in the VAR protocol for
okay.
league in the world through FIFA, yeah.
Any league that adopts it will have to kind of go with, okay, cool.
Yep, and they already do. I mean, that's standard in the VAR protocol all around the world.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yep. So, with that new VAR, that X-ray, a lot of people and fans were kind of saying, the old school were kind of saying, man, this takes out, the element of surprise from the game or stuff like that. I kind of am a culprit of kind of thinking the same way earlier in the tournament. Now that you're kind of explaining this to me, I'm kind of like, man, this takes away a lot of doubt, all the doubt. It really makes it a fairer game. And makes it so that you don't lose to a fluke goal in an important match or something like that. So I think it's a good addition for the sport, definitely.
Yeah, again, before VAR, there were things like that where teams lost on a goal that shouldn't have been a goal, or they had something, a goal that didn't count when it should have for them, and fans would be outraged about that, and rightly so, right? Because they want the best decisions to be made in these games.
Right.
They want it to be correct, and so yeah, sure, it's a trade-off in I don't know, a little bit of the spontaneity of celebrations or something like that, but it definitely makes for a fairer game where no one's losing because of a terrible call like this anymore, and there's a lot more certainty. I think, in my opinion, that's always better.
For sure.
To make sure that the game is fair and that the results are based on how a team performs and not on some decision that didn't go the right way.
And I mean, the fans are raging anyways because of. I mean, even if the VAR call is good, it's correct, they're just gonna keep complaining. So,
They'll
um,
complain for one thing or the other.
exactly. Like I see both ends of the spectrum here, where I don't really have like an opinion on if I do think that VAR takes away the spontaneity of the game, but I do like technology, so it's cool to see it in action.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
And I will say, for anyone who's very interested in VAR, Pro puts out an excellent series. It's on their social media, and they post it on YouTube, called Inside Video Review, and they look at the VAR decisions in MLS every week.
Oh,
They put it out every week. You can hear some of the audio that's going back and forth between the VAR and the referee, and see what the video is being sent down. Most leagues don't allow something like this to be put out, or most referee organizations don't do that either. But Pro is really transparent about a lot of the VAR work that they do, and anyone who's interested to see it in action should definitely check that out. Inside Video Review. It's I think really eye opening, and it helps people understand the processes a lot better. And I think once you understand the processes and see it in action, people tend to like it a lot more.
Yeah, I was gonna say Liga MX used to release video and audio of all the VAR calls until I think people got very upset, and they started, like, I guess I don't know if they started like harassing the referees and whatnot, but they just decided not to do it anymore.
Definitely, we'll have to give that a watch, Adrian. Or listen for sure. Cool, man. So I guess for the next item we kind of wanted to talk about here happened between the Portugal and Uruguay game. Bruno Fernandes had received the ball, and he was kind of taking on defenders, and he tries to nutmeg Tunel Jimenez from Uruguay inside the box. Jimenez goes in feet first, doesn't really hit Bruno Fernandes with his feet or anything. The penalty is kind of called as the ball goes between his legs, Jimenez's legs, and hits the back of his hand, or his hand that he's using to kind of land on and support himself with. To me, as a not referee, I see this as a not intentional handball. He's kind of catching his body from falling in a natural position. Am I wrong here, or what do you think here?
This is probably one of the more gray area calls of the controversial ones, right, from the World Cup. It's interesting because the VAR and ultimately the referee saw this the same way. Right? They thought this was a handball. And I think after Colina, who is the head of refereeing for FIFA, said he thought this wasn't a handball. The way that I think is easiest to describe this is it's a decision by the referee whether or not the arm, the outstretched arm that the ball eventually hits, is a support arm. Is the player using that arm to support their body as they go to ground? If it is a support arm, then it's not a handball. You're allowed to, as you slide or as you go to ground, to put your arm down to brace yourself to avoid injury. And if you are bracing yourself with that arm and the ball hits that arm, that's not a handball. As long as that
okay.
What's interesting in this situation is that Jimenez, his arm hasn't gotten to the ground yet.
Oh, right.
He's not using that arm necessarily to support himself. It's in the process of becoming his support arm, but it hasn't reached the ground yet, so he's not using it to support himself.
So I guess you can make an argument that
that's what the VAR would have seen, and then when the referee viewed the video, that's what the referee would have seen. And so it all depends on how you interpret the support arm. Does the arm have to be on the ground and actively supporting you, or is it enough that that will be the support arm when it reaches the ground? It's one that the laws in many areas say the phrase "in the opinion of the referee." I think that this is one of those in the opinion of the referee decisions, and I think clearly that day the VAR and the referee, in their opinion, this wasn't a support arm because it wasn't on the ground supporting him as he fell.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that. That's crazy that you saw that. I guess when you're in that position, you have to have your arm connected or touching your body in in order for it not to be called a penalty, right? If you're in the penalty box and they shoot the ball at you and your hand is up to your chest or whatever, touching you, you don't really normally get called a penalty for those. But this one, his arm's loose, and like you said, it hasn't even touched the ground yet. So I could see how the ref kind of went with that decision. Yeah, for sure.
So I do have a question
again,
on.
go
Sorry,
ahead.
Chris. I do have a question on that specific area that Adrian is mentioning, because you can some of the referees turn pundits on television, right? They always, on this kind of plays, they say like, well, everything that is a handball inside the box is a penalty. So even if it's like an accidental handball or whatever it is, if it's on the chest or if it's close to the body, everything, if the ball touches the hand or the part of what's considered to be an arm, right? For I guess based on the rules, it's supposed to be a penalty. So is that something that is applicable in your experience on all leagues, or it depends on the criteria of the referee at the game?
Well, the laws are the same everywhere, so league to league it should be the same. But I would say also what you said is not necessarily correct. If there are many situations where the ball can hit someone's hand and it's not a handball. The laws have changed a little bit here over the past several years. What it used to say was just the simple consideration of intentional handball. And that was in the laws for years and wasn't interpreted literally, right? It wasn't that only an intentional handball can be a handball. So in order to move more into the direction of what was actually being enforced on the field and how the law had been interpreted for a long time, a few years ago, the IFAB, they're the International Football Advisory Board, the body who sets the rules, the laws of the game for soccer. They changed to talk about the natural playing silhouette, right? And so you had to keep your hand and your arm within the natural playing silhouette. And if the ball hits your hand and your arm is not within your natural playing silhouette, then that would be a handball. But then that changed again recently. I think maybe understandably so, because there are questions about what is natural, what is the natural playing silhouette, and so the wording changed a little bit, and now it talks about an expected position. Is your hand in an expected position? And so again, going back to this particular incident, it's hard to say. Is Jimenez's hand in an expected position? And is the other mention of the support arm, is that what's important? It's a little bit of a gray area here, and clearly one that even high-level international referees are disagreeing on a little bit. But in the moment, it's up to the opinion of the referee, and they thought it was a handball on the day.
Cool. So I guess there's still some spontaneous plays that kind of can go either way, that VAR still kind of leaves it to the ref to kind of decide ultimately.
I mean, if you want to get rid of that, you have to put like a responsive, I guess you have to make this suit that has sensors, and you will have to pretty much measure every single movement of the player. That's gonna.
Or you gotta make a just a straight up rule. If it touches any part of your arm, it's a foul there or something.
It's a handball.
Like just a yeah.
See, I don't think that's a very productive change.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
There has to be some nuance, and you make you put one person in charge, and that's the referee, and it's up to them to make the decisions. So,
yeah.
And last thing, only because somebody said something about the decision making of the VAR. Last thing that I want to mention here is that At the end of the day, there is still only one person making final decisions on any of these things, and it is the referee. The assistant referees are there to assist with duties of the referee, and they have duties related to offside, but everything is just assistance. That's including from the VAR and any of the other officials supporting the VAR. It ultimately, everything is a recommendation essentially to the referee, and the referee is the only decider. So every decision, anything coming from VAR, anything coming from the assistant referees, is going to the referee to make the final decision.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks for clearing that up for us, man.
Yeah. I'm assuming nowadays it must be very difficult and quite expensive to buy a game.
Yeah, I can't imagine how it would happen. I'm sure in parts of the world it maybe happens and there are people try, but especially in something with as much scrutiny as a World Cup,
yeah,
it would be impossible.
That shouldn't be the case.
All right. So the next one we have for you, Chris, was man, what a game in match day 3 between Japan and Spain. This was one that Adrian and I kind of don't really agree, see eye to eye on. He thinks it's out. I kind of think the ball kind of overhangs on the line. But the play for our listeners here that we're talking about is Ritsu kind of crosses it in, and Kaoru saves it there. It kind of shows the ball kind of crossing the line, depending on how you look at it. It's a last second, last ditch sliding cross back in from Kaoru, and number 17, Tanaka, scores off of it. The big controversy here is, did that ball end up crossing the line? What are the rules here for soccer? In tennis, if a ball hits the line, it's still in. Any part of the line is still in. Is it similar here for soccer?
Tennis. In tennis, the important thing is where the ball impacts the ground.
Right.
In soccer, that's not important. It's purely down to the position of the ball. It can be in the air, it can be on the ground, but the position of the ball is the only thing that's important. Its interaction with the ground has no bearing on any of the decision. Any boundary line in soccer is part of the area that it encloses. And so the line is still part of the field. And in order to be out of play, the entirety of the ball has to cross the entirety of the line. So I think what made this a controversial moment, because I don't think that this is controversial, and I'll get there in a minute. I think this is a very clear decision. But what made this controversial to a lot of people was the camera angle, right? I mean, a broadcast angle for soccer, typically the camera's at midfield and it's panning left to right.
Right.
And that can cause, as you get further and further away from midfield, some issues where with a spherical ball, you can see the green grass outside of the line between the ball and the line.
Right.
But what you're seeing is green grass that's between the bottom of the ball and the line. The ball is a sphere, and so the middle of the ball, obviously, is extending out further in all directions than the bottom of the ball, right? The bottom of the ball is a single point, and
right.
The middle of the ball is a circular cross section of the ball. And so in this case, the middle of the ball is still overhanging the line. Again, where the ball impacts the ground has no bearing on this. It is that the entirety of the ball has to be over the line for it to be out of play. And in this case, the middle of the ball is still overhanging the line. I think FIFA, in the hours and day, I guess, following the game, proved it very definitively, right? They were able to show really good angles, and the computer recreation and everything that show very clearly that the ball is still overhanging the line.
Sorry, you kind of mentioned the middle of the ball still being overhanging. You mean the edge of the ball?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean the middle vertically. So
the middle vertically in a plane.
Across the middle of the ball vertically.
Gotcha. Okay.
There are points on that cross section that are still overhanging the ball. I mean, overhanging the
line,
boundary line. Mm-hmm.
So we got to take into the fact that the boundary line, it's a 360 space. It goes an invisible line goes up pretty much. So if like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be touching the ground. If there's a winger running down the flank and he gets a ball passed to him, he saves it in the air, but half of the ball is out. That's still in. So yeah,
Correct.
as long as it's still above the line, I guess, or within the line. Okay, yeah, like you said, I mean, there wasn't really much controversy after they kind of came back and showed that, but at the time, and it's kind of the first time with this new VAR that we kind of see something like this in real time and analyze to this extent. So it's definitely one to talk about.
Yeah, and again, I mean, there have been other decisions like this that have used VAR for this kind of in-out boundary decision in the past. So it's not a totally new decision. And actually, because for whatever reason, they weren't able to show the computer-generated recreation, the X-ray, on the broadcast,
Right.
a lot it left people with questions. But again, VAR thankfully typically has, and in this case definitely had, a camera that looks straight up and down that boundary line, the goal line. And so they can see really clearly whether or not there was ball overhanging the line or not.
You gotta explain this to me, because look, this ball is out, dude. I don't know what y'all talking about, but I don't care what VAR says. This thing is out. I'm still wrapping my head around what you said vertically and the middle center or whatever. I don't know if I'm just plain stupid, but I don't.
You gotta go back to geometry, man.
Your listeners won't be able to see it. Maybe you
Yeah.
can put it in the notes of the show or something. But I'm going to send you a video
Okay.
afterwards that shows how, from a broadcast angle or from some oblique angle, like it can look very, very convincingly like the ball is out. But once you see it from the angle that's straight up and down that line, you can see how it's still overhanging.
All right. I'll keep my mind open for this one.
Keep an open mind, man.
Yeah.
All right. The last one we kind of want to discuss with you, Chris, here is the penalty that was given to Messi and Argentina against Poland.
Mm-hmm.
A cross was made into the area. Messi goes up for it to try to get his header on it, and the goalkeeper Szczesny kind of comes out for it as well, and kind of uses his hand and in an effort to try to get the ball, it kind of hits Messi in the face. Again, for me, not a pro ref or anything. I always thought that kind of the goalie had superiority or priority in the air in his box. Why is this given as a penalty?
Okay, so we'll walk through it a little bit step by step here. First of all, the ball comes in. You're right. Both players go for the ball, Messi and Szczesny. I guess I'll ask you, which player plays the ball first? Which player plays the ball? Only one player plays the ball. Do you remember from the play?
It was Messi, wasn't it?
Messi, right?
Messi heads the ball. And Szczesny does not touch the ball. And Szczesny is late there as well, right? So the ball is gone. Messi has already headed the ball away by the time that Szczesny arrives there with his hand. If you put this in the context of any other player on the field,
it's a foul.
Player plays the ball, other player comes in late and makes contact in a manner that constitutes a foul. Contact with the face.
Yeah.
That's a foul. The goalkeeper has a lot of protection in terms of the goalkeeper having possession of the ball, right?
Okay.
If the goalkeeper has two hands possessing the ball, that's possession. If they have the ball between themselves and a surface, so between their hand and their chest, between their hand and their leg, between one hand and the ground, that's considered possession as well. But in this case, Szczesny's never touched the ball.
Yeah.
The ball is already gone, and Szczesny hits Messi in the face.
Yeah,
So,
and that's not allowed.
Right, exactly, and that's so I think that this one, again, people thought it was controversial because it is the goalkeeper diving for the ball.
Right.
But the goalkeepers are protected a lot, but it doesn't mean that they can challenge for the ball and be late and hit someone in the face and not have a consequence. Like that's still a foul.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. This is very enlightening, Chris, honestly, because I grew up thinking that if you touch the keeper, no matter if it's the keeper being late or just the inertia of the play, the decision will always go in favor of the goalkeeper. But I guess that's not true.
And in Liga MX especially, Adrian, I think they protect the goalkeepers a lot to that extent.
Way too much, yeah, for sure.
It's like quarterbacks in the NFL.
Again, the difference is that in most of those, like, yes, the decisions will go in favor of the goalkeeper a lot, like very often, but it's typically when the goalkeeper is coming out to catch a ball or to punch a ball, and they play the ball. The goalkeeper plays the ball and gets even a little hit, and they'll give that as a foul. But in this case, Szczesny never gets to the ball.
So, Chris, in a situation like this, let's say that hypothetically, let's say they cross the ball, no one touches the ball, right? But Messi and Szczesny still collide against each other. Would that still be considered a foul, or would that just be this is just the inertia of the game and we keep on moving with a goal kick?
Hypotheticals are really tough because I mean, you mean everything else is exactly the same, but the ball is like 3 feet higher in the air?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Why would Szczesny's hand be there in the first place? 3 feet higher in the air, right?
That is true.
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. But I mean, I guess I can give an opinion on the hypothetical as much as possible. In that, if the goalkeeper dives, doesn't get any. In this case, then he's nowhere near the ball.
That's the 2 penalties.
I think that's a penalty too. But
okay.
So if you're a goalie, don't be diving into people's faces without going for the ball.
You have to get the ball. I think the more valuable hypothetical here is if Szczesny dives and he gets the ball, right? He just gets the ball away with his fingertips, and his momentum carries him into Messi. That's again, it's another hypothetical, so who can say for sure without seeing it? But that's probably not a penalty, right? He's made the save. Both challenging for the ball. It's like anywhere, like I said, like any player in midfield, right? If they're challenging for the ball and they get the ball first, it doesn't mean they can't commit a foul. But it's a big consideration that you have to think about when you're deciding if something is a foul or not. And in this case, he doesn't get the ball, and he catches the player in the face.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you for explaining those for us, Chris. Before we kind of wrap it up here, kind of wanted to get your overall rating on how you think this was implemented at the World Cup. This being the highest level of international soccer. Would you give this how would you rate the reffing and the VAR overall? I know there was plenty of controversies, but there was plenty of really good moments and plenty of record-breaking moments. Want to take a shout out to the all-female team, first of its kind. So that was a big moment. So how do you rate this overall, Chris?
Yeah, I think actually, despite what a lot of people might have thought was a controversial World Cup in some senses in terms of the officiating, I think that the quality was really, really good. And it's funny that as VAR has been implemented and now there's more and more good technology and better camera angles and everything, the things that become controversial, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, right?
Right.
It used to be like, a goal was supposed to be given, but it wasn't given, or, Maradona scores with his hand. And now we're talking about like the controversy of someone's shoulder being like 1 inch ahead of someone else.
Right.
And so, the actual, what I think are the actual big controversies are gone, right? We've been able to get rid of all of those from the game for the most part. And people are still gonna, their team loses, or they're still gonna find something that they don't like. But the things that people are finding controversial are just smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's a big victory, I think. And again, I think the level of refereeing has improved hugely around the world, especially as leagues have grown bigger and bigger, and there's more money invested in them, and the stakes are higher in leagues all across the world. The refereeing has improved, proportionally to that around the world. There's a lot more money invested in referee training and the technology that is going into the game. VAR is now very widespread across a lot of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think the quality is just getting better and better.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the training for referees are incredibly fit now. They run often the most of anybody on the field. And as refereeing has been professionalized around the world, you now have referees who, it's their full-time job,
right?
And they're paid to officiate games, but in the rest of the time, that's their job, and they can use all of that time to get themselves into absolute peak fitness. Another recommendation, maybe more homework for your listeners. There was a great article recently about referee fitness tests that I recommend people. So if you just search referee fitness test, I believe it was the Washington Post did it during the World Cup. They put this out, and one of their reporters attempted the referee fitness test. I think the reporter is a track and field and cross country coach, and he failed.
Oh, dang!
Wow.
It's an insanely difficult test. I have to run it. It's actually coming up here in the first week of February, so I have to really get into the thing. They're not easy, and so like I'm saying, around the world now, the standard is that referees are passing this test, and it's not easy. So the quality just keeps growing around the world.
Well, don't eat too many tamales for Christmas, man.
For real, dude. Yeah,
I know. And then I just, a shout out to, we had a first American official on a World Cup final. I think he had a real shot, Ishmael Elfath, to get the center assignment in the final. He ended up as the fourth official, but he had an excellent tournament, and he's the first American to be an on-field official in the World Cup final. That's amazing.
Awesome, yeah.
Katie Nesbitt, who is she was just named the MLS Assistant Referee of the Year. She was the reserve assistant referee on the final as well.
Wow.
And good performances from the Americans who were there at the World Cup, and we sent several officials this time, and they did really well. So I think it just goes to show that the level of refereeing in the United States, despite what many fans might think, because people think people criticize referees everywhere, but the levels in the United States are really good.
Yeah, I have my reserved opinions about the Liga MX ones, because for whatever reason they do great on the World Cup. No, listen, Cesar Arturo Ramos did awesome on the World Cup, but whenever he puts on the Liga MX coach jersey, dude, I don't know what happened. So something's going up.
Cool, man. Well, Chris, man, we want to thank you so much for being on here. You really enlightened us on a lot of these decisions, and really took away some of the haziness to them. We just want to make sure that, before we wrap up, be sure to check out our next episode. We're going to be going over the U.S. and Mexico players whose stocks went up during the World Cup.
Hell yeah.
What to expect from the U.S. and Mexico players in Europe now that the second half of the season is starting, and plenty more topics next episode. So be sure to download us or subscribe on YouTube or any of your preferred podcast listening services. We're on Spotify, Apple, Overcast, and all the big 7 Spotify services. So Adrian, thanks for joining again as our co-host here on Puro Pinche Gol. Chris, want to again give you a shout out. Appreciate it, man. And hopefully we'll have you on again soon to kind of give us your thoughts on another big tournament here, maybe the Copa America.
yeah, whenever you need a refereeing talk, I'm happy to come back. And
Awesome.
I think it's good for people to hear from referees. They haven't always heard from referees, and so the more we can explain, the better.
For sure. Well, appreciate it, guys. Adrian, you have anything to close us out with?
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And I just want to say, Chris, thank you again so much for taking the time talking to us. You truly enlightened me on the referee world. And I really look forward for the next time we have you on the pod.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.